Welcome to 7.10's Math Moment. Today students continue to work with finding the percent of a number. So we're going to look at a couple different examples, and today we're just going to look at word problems so we can practice more of how to set that up as an equation when I'm looking at it in a word problem situation. So example 1 says Jennifer has a 200-page book. She has read 40% of it. How many pages has she read? So she's got 200 pages, and I know she's read 40% of it. Well, we need students to focus on what the it is here, because I know that of means times, so I know that I'm going to take 40% times the it. Well, the it is what she has, the 200-page book. So I'm going to set this up as 200 times 40%, which I know that 40% needs to be written as a decimal. So just as a reminder from lesson 7.9, is in a word problem means equals, of in a word problem means to multiply, and anytime I'm working with a percent, I need to turn it into a decimal in order to work with it in math. So I've got my of, which means multiply. I know that I've got my 200-page book, that's what I have to start with, and I want to know that it. What is that it for the equals? So I'm just going to take 200 times 40 hundredths. So whenever I multiply with decimals, I can pretend like the decimal's not even there. I don't need it until the end. To me, this problem should be really simple because I can get rid of all of these zeros and just act like it's 2 times 4. I know 2 times 4 is 8. Now I just have to add those 3 zeros back on in order for it to make sense with my work and my problem. And then I have 2 numbers behind my decimal in my problem, so I need 2 numbers behind my decimal in my answer for a final answer of 80. Now before, and excuse me, it should be 80 pages. Now before I move on and say my answer is right no matter what, I know for sure, I really got to think about if that's reasonable. So we work with students on 40%. A percent is always out of 100. That's why we're able to write the decimal out of 100. All right, so when I'm thinking about 40 out of 100, well, I know 50 out of 100 is half. So 40 is less than half when I'm looking at a percent. So my answer should be less than half of 200. Well, half of 200 would be 100, and 80 is less than that, so my answer seems very reasonable. All right, so when I'm looking at how many pages she's read, my answer seems reasonable to be 80 pages. Let's go ahead and take a look at example 2. Example 2 says Mrs. McVeigh took 300 milligrams of her medicine. So that's how much she took. This was 25% of her daily dose. 25% of her daily dose. What is her daily dose of this medicine? So this problem is a little bit different because I'm looking for what equals her daily dose of medicine. 300 milligrams was only 25% of what she normally takes. In this problem, I don't know what the daily dose is. I know that this 300 was only 25% of the whole. The other percent problems that we've been working with so far, we knew the whole and we were just finding the percent of that whole. Here, I have the percent of part of it, but I want to know the whole daily dose. So in this case, I'm going to set my problem up a little bit different. 25% out of 100 is the same as the 300 of what? So I need to figure out what is my whole dose. If 300 is only 25% of my whole, what is that whole? So I'm going to set this up in this way, and I could again solve it as a factor puzzle. I could solve it as I could use cross multiplication, or I could also set it up in a different way as an equation and say 25%, which is the same as 25 over 100, or 25 hundredths, okay, equals 300x. And then I would be working with the same sort of thing to isolate the variable. So here I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply, just because that's the one that I'm choosing to work with. So I'm going to take 300 times 100, which would be 30,000. and then equals 25x. So now to isolate the variable, I just need to divide by 25. So I'm going to take 25 divided by 25 and 30,000 divided by 25 to help me solve my problem. Now, I don't get to take any zeros off here because I don't have any zeros on the outside number, so I have to leave it just as it is. 25 goes into 3, it cannot. 25 goes into 30 one time to get me exactly 25. When I subtract, I'm left with 5. And I bring down my 0. So then 25 goes into 50 2 times. 2 times 25 is exactly 50. And then I know because I have just 0, I'm going to put a 0 up. Because I have another 0, I'll need to put a 0 up again. So this tells me that the x is 1,200. And then I need to think about that. Before I decide that that's my answer, I need to think about, is that reasonable? So I knew that 300 was only 25% of my daily dose. So my daily dose really should be larger than that, because when I took 300, that was only a fourth or 25% of how much I needed that day. So 1,200 does seem much larger than 300, and in fact, it's exactly 4 times larger than 300, so this makes a lot of sense and it seems very reasonable. So when you're looking at the 2 different types of word problems, it's really important to remember these keywords when you're setting up the problem, and also just talk with your student about what the question is asking you. If you have any other questions about this lesson, make sure to see your math teacher.